Good evening, good evening, good evening. This is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. It's another day's journey, and I'm so glad about it and so grateful for those of you that are joining me at 5 o'clock. It is our normal prayer time, which we are doing something very different now through possibly February as we're taking time out to hear from the mayoral candidates, one per Saturday. Obviously, we will take off on Christmas Eve, and then we will get back going. And so I'm just grateful for your joining us for this conversation. I do want you to know we're just getting back. We were in Florida, and we're grateful that our 13U boys made it to the championship. That one is that's a difficult game. They're playing a team from Miami right now, and at halftime they were down 18-0, and they're playing some beasts, but they are giving their best, and they are already winners in our book, whatever happens, and we're going to celebrate them when they get back here. The girls start tonight at 8 o'clock. And we have the 18-year-olds and the 14-year-olds, and they do their piece tonight. If they advance to tomorrow, they will be in the championship rounds for that as well. They're having a great time. I encourage you to look at some of those Facebook Lives that we did on my page on yesterday. I want to thank God for all of our football coaches, all of our football moms, all of our cheerleading coaches and cheerleading moms and dads and football dads, just this whole program. And I cannot say enough about Greg Burris, who has now been down there for about 7 days, making sure that our children have a wonderful experience, and they are having that. And I need you to know that just that, earning the right to go to Florida for the championships is a feat that they have done. And so we celebrate them and we thank God for them. Also, I want you to know that something is going to be presented at church tomorrow. For those of you that watch online, I need you online at the beginning of service. And those of you that are coming, I honestly believe it is Leon Sullivan 2.0, not me, but what is being presented. And I hope that all of us will participate. I believe in it so strongly that I wanted Keith Leaphart, Jerry Johnson to come to church tomorrow to share with us what I think is necessary for the development of our community. And so you'll hear more about that tomorrow morning in our worship service at 10 o'clock. But tonight, we are again having conversations with the mayoral candidates for the office, obviously, of the mayor of Philadelphia. A very coveted position. Philadelphia, because of our home rule charter and the way our city is set up, the mayor is an extremely strong position and important position in the life of our community. And every 4 years, we get to decide who that is going to be. There are those that want that and understand what I am doing. I am a part, just a small part of a larger conversation. After we finish with me, there's going to be a coming together with Black media to have all of these candidates together. Remember, I am not here to show you what I know. I'm not here to debate or endorse. I'm here to ask questions. What I want for the next half hour to 40 minutes is for each of these candidates to honestly tell us what they're saying, and to not give gotcha questions, not to trap, but to give them the opportunity to be full-throated in what they are saying. There's going to be plenty of time for people to go at them, and some of you, and at some point that will need to happen if we get the right leader. But I think we begin here with letting everyone speak and hear what their convictions are. And we want to ask a few questions and be prayerful for all of them, because this process is so important. Our city is in need of something fresh, something new, And we're in need of all of us, from the private sector, the religious sector, the business sector, the public sector, to come together for the good of Philadelphia, to push this city to live up to its name, Philadelphia, city of brotherly love, and as some have said, sisterly affection. Well, tonight we have councilperson Maria Quiñones-Sánchez, and we are grateful that she's here. I'm going to ask you to come on in, Sister Sánchez, and let's have a conversation about why you want to take on this task at this time in the city of Philadelphia to be our next mayor. Well, welcome, and thank you so much for being here. As always, I'm beginning this conversation with simply this question: who are you, and why do you want to be the mayor?
Thank you so very much. And thank you for this opportunity and all the people that have come together to try to create these kind of forums and conversations that I think are so important. There's so many candidates in the race, right?
Yep.
And a lot of highly qualified candidates in the race. And it is important that all of us get an opportunity and that the constituency gets an opportunity to hear from all of us directly. Why am I running for mayor of the city of Philadelphia? I believe the city is at a crossroads. As someone who grew up in Hunting Park, from North Philadelphia, who was an executive early on in my career, and then came on to the city council. For the last 15 years, I have seen what the potential of Philadelphia can be. I've represented some of the most challenging areas, and I'll take a moment to just really thank you, Reverend, and your wife. You have been on the ground seeing some of the challenges that this city faces and what happens when the leadership does not understand how policy impacts and sometimes traumatizes some of the most vulnerable constituencies in the city of Philadelphia. You've been on the ground in Kensington. And that's why I'm running. I'm running because in council, it became clear to me that in order for me to take that conversation and the voice and the work that we've done in our district to a broader level, you need to be mayor, because the mayor ultimately controls those departments, sets the tone, and sets the policy. In the 7th Councilmatic District, we planned, and we're have a very thoughtful plan about how we want to grow the 7th. But every day, something happened, and we had to pivot. And that's why the next leader and the next mayor has to be someone who has that kind of experience of knowing we plan, we project out. This campaign will be not about 2023, but about what this city looks like in 2030. How do we utilize what we learned during COVID recovery and the social unrest, that when we have a crisis and we don't have leadership, people die, right? One of the things that I learned during the COVID situation was that the residents of the 7th all of a sudden became the essential workers, the people that kept the city moving. And we really have to step back and look at, are we being fair, equitable? Are we really serving the city of Philadelphia to the best of our ability? I love this city. I know what its potential can be. And I want to use the skills as an executive, the skills that I learned in council, but more than that, what I have lived in North Philadelphia, where I grew up, and in South Kensington, where I currently live and I've raised my family. So that's why I want to get involved in this election in particular. It's not just about making history. A woman will get elected. I'm going to say that everywhere I go. It is really about the historical context of a diverse, mixed income city that walks away from some of the challenges and the segregation that we've had, where everybody, our most vulnerable, are valued, to the folks that live in the wealthiest neighborhoods, that we can all aspire for the same things, which is a clean, safe neighborhood, a walkable neighborhood, a good school in your neighborhood. Basic things that all of us should be entitled to and should aspire to have.
Thank you for that. Obviously, you're going to be asked a lot of questions by a lot of people, and those questions will come from their agenda for you. But the mayor is to be a leader. So if I were to ask you, what are your top 3 priorities and why? What are you going to address, and what do you think are a top 3 things that must be addressed in this next administration?
We are going to change the public safety conversation, the thing that is in people's minds so much, right? When we think about public safety, we think about gun violence, and we think about the police department. We think about those challenges. The police, and we've led our conversation around poverty and safety from a police perspective, and not the fact that the police department and others are a reaction to what we've already failed to do. And when I talk about public safety, I'm going to speak to our health and human services component, how we invest in people, right? How do we look at every single operational department in the city and ask them those questions? What are you doing around public safety? What are you doing around anti-poverty, taking care of people in poverty? And what are you doing to grow the city, right? So that everyone is growing. Acknowledging that in order for us to move forward in an equitable space, we got to readdress what we haven't done as a city. And I'm going to talk about what I've lived and what I see are the opportunities of how the streets department can make us safer than the police department can ever do. A camera program that is real, that's around the city. We have wonderful eds and meds institutions. Everybody has their own camera program. The city has 4 different camera programs. We need to talk about the camera program and how we provide some safety. Lighting. We did many projects like this in parts of my district where we did LED lightings. We knew where the crime issues were going on, and we said, at minimum, we need to light this up. Trash, cleanliness, right, in our city. This notion that we can't have a clean city. When I go on vacation with my husband, oftentimes he looks at what am I doing as we walk, and I'm counting trash cans. It's for me, everything that we do in our neighborhoods says how we care about people. So the streets department is a key component of that. The water department, when we talk about environmental justice, right? The water department has resources and can really improve the quality of life that we have in our neighborhoods. L&I, which is our compliance arm. I was chair of L&I for 12 years. Safe housing, compliant businesses, all of those things come from L&I and the potential. And what we do there says how we care about our city. And then you talk about the police department, right? That's after, have we set up the right infrastructure, right? And then are we providing the right supports? We know the next shooter and we know the next victim because we've already failed them once. We failed them in our schools. They may have come into interface with our DHS, our human services component. They may have been in our juvenile justice system. And we did not wrap ourselves around them at that time. And that's why you see this sense of hopelessness from the folks. So public safety is going to come when we invest in our neighborhoods and our infrastructure, and when we invest in the human beings that we have in the city, acknowledging and understanding what they have brought to the table, what they may not have had, and readdressing that so that we can move forward. And then we will have a police department that has a strong mission around community and smart policing. I was on the police oversight board during the Nutter administration, and the Nutter asked the Justice Department to come in, and they did a real good report around what the police department needed to change its culture, from de-escalation to technology to forensics. We can fix the police department's culture if we give them the role that they should be playing in public safety, which is not leading the public safety conversation, but at the end of everything that we're doing, because we're doing the other things better.
Okay, thank you for that. For those of us who think in terms of policy, because I think there's not anyone that would disagree with anything that you just said. Is there a policy that you could think of that gives us an idea of how you understand this from a policy perspective? Is there a policy that exists now that either wouldn't exist or that would change so that you could achieve what you're just talking about?
So the mayor, and you said this in your opening statement, we have a very powerful mayor form of government. The mayor sets the tone and the policy. And if you charge every single person in government with thinking about public safety, anti-poverty measures, right, and quality of life, that every department thinks of their job as that, that's a policy, right? That is a statement about what your function is. And right now, what we have, and look, I've been chair of appropriations for the last 6.5 years. I hear what people say is important, and then I watch where they make their investments, right? And so we say we care about certain things, but then we don't invest in them. And the proof is what we see out in these communities. So that to me is the biggest, is that setting that tone that every single department has a role to play in public safety, that every single department has a role to play around poverty. Every single department has a role to play around economic growth and opportunity and inclusion. Every single department has that. That is, but the tone is set with the mayor who is committed to that, right? Who says to every department, we're going to do zero-based budgeting. You're gonna tell us every single year how if you started from scratch, and then you're going to use those pillars that I've talked about: public safety, anti-poverty, economic real inclusion, right, and quality of life.
Okay, thank you for that. So you raised issues around public safety and how a number of different offices lead into the public safety. Obviously, we are concerned about economic development. Philadelphia, as some have said, is the buckle on the money belt from New York to DC. Lots of people want to live in Philadelphia. Lots of white people want to live in Philadelphia. Lots of people are moving from New York to DC to come here because there seems to be money to be made here and opportunity. From my vantage as a pastor now for 28 years, it seems that opportunity is not hitting our people. Can you explain to me why that is? What is happening that we've got all this opportunity in Philadelphia, but Black people seem to not, Black and brown people seem to not be able to get into that opportunity? What's that?
So it's real important that we understand that we are a day's drive from almost 75% of the country. We have an international airport. We have train access and transportation capabilities, right? So that will continue to make Philadelphia an important city, right, in the eastern border, right? Why do we want to be different than what we have seen in New York and other places where when they talk about the success of building their cities, it has always been at the expense of poor people and Black and brown people not getting opportunities, right? We've watched it everywhere. Boston is no longer affordable. Chicago is struggling with some of those issues. Real economic inclusion means that we have to say this structure does not work. And I'll give you some examples of that. We got to look at our tax system. I have been a proponent. Every single small business tax reform initiative that has been successful in the city, I have authored. The $100,000 BERT exemption that has ensured that 73,000 small businesses, most of them Black and brown, don't have a liability to the city. I offered them. And I authored them because you've got to understand what real economic opportunity is. When we talk about the certification of businesses so that they can play in the space, right? We've created a burden, right, around providing real access by creating this bureaucracy around how do you access contracts, right? We force small businesses, right, to take on contracts with prime contractors because we're unwilling to debundle the work to help them grow on their own. We have set those structures up. We've allowed the system to set up structures that we know does not make you equal and does not give you equal access. And then God forbid you do get access to a contract in the city of Philadelphia, we will close your business because we're not good business partners and we won't pay you for 180 days, right? So we can almost kill you if you come in and engage. So let's have a real honest conversation about access. Debundling, we're the buyer. This is your government, right? We have, when you include the airport, the school district, and others, it's probably a $20 billion portfolio, right? And the mayor gets to set the tone and say, no, we're not going to force small contractors to bid with these guys and hope that they're fair with them, right? We're going to give them economic opportunity by debundling and creating contract processes that allows companies to grow.
All right. Thank you for that. You raised the issue around the school district, and that is very near and dear to my heart. I think public education is critical. I think those that can afford private education, if they choose to do so, should. It should not come at the expense of public education. What is your plan to fix public education, given the fact that the funding stream from the state is not where we need it to be? But there are some things that the mayor and city council can do around that funding. How do you address what is happening with education in the city of Philadelphia?
Education is a very complex conversation to have, right? We have to agree on what is it that we'd like to see as a city. People fought very hard for local control, but we didn't really define what that meant, right? Local control for the sake of local control. What was the goal of that, right? I served as chair of education these last 3 years after Councilwoman Blackwell. And I saw the conversations that were going on in the room about school buildings, around everything outside of what do people deserve? What do young people deserve? They deserve a good K-8 school in every neighborhood, whether it's a public school or a public charter, right? And then when we talked about high schools, right, that we have so many low performing high schools, what are the high school options that we want to offer kids to prepare them for the workforce or college? We're going to talk about community college should be free for young people. Community college has to be where we train our young people and transition them into the workforce. Community college can be where we train our adults who are either returning citizens or changing their fields. Community college has to be the economic engine that helps us build that skills gap that we're doing. It is cheaper for us to put thousands of young people at community college in their junior and their senior year than to keep them in underperforming high schools. We need to have that conversation. So this bigger vision about what do kids deserve. The one last project I was working on that we were not able to complete because, again, when we talked about old buildings, look, my elementary high school is 100 plus years old, McClure, and they're old buildings, right? We focused on the building and not what are we teaching young people? Do we have an inclusive curriculum that values them, honors them, recognizes them, that sees them? How do we change how we teach young people so that we're meeting young people who are different learners, right? As opposed to this traditional situation. We know that having a Black or brown teacher in front of a young person improves their academic achievement. Every study shows that. So we talk about all of this stuff in the abstract, but we're not doing anything about it. We don't even have a bilingual education philosophy in the school district of Philadelphia, right? Because the adults don't think young people should be bilingual and trilingual when they're operating in a global world. So we have to take the conversation. And one of the things when we were talking about creating a school building authority, what I was hoping we would do was take the building conversation, use and leverage our eds and meds. And we saw that when University of Penn came in and provided $100 million to the school district. We have capacity, right? We can create a building authority where we put the best minds and we come up with a building plan that is not about around the education piece, so that Dr. Wallington could focus on the education piece. But if you go to a school board meeting, we're still talking, and look, there is an environmental justice issue around lead, asbestos, all those things are accurate. But I want Dr. Wallington focus on academic achievement, on an inclusive curriculum that values our young people and producing the teachers of color that we need so that our young people can achieve. And So you almost have to separate it to come together. And the feds and the state and the private sector would invest more if they felt we had that kind of comprehensive plan. When we talk to, whether it was Penn's money or any other, people want to do more, but they just don't want to give government money if there isn't a plan. So I think Philadelphia can create that kind of plan and then charge people with the work. It's like, this is your lane, this is your lane, this is what we need you to do, and move forward. But we have to speak to what kind of educational system we want to have for young people, that and the system that they deserve. And it shouldn't matter what zip code. It shouldn't matter that they go to a special admit school. We can have those, but every young person should have access.
Thank you. Now, speaking to that, we now have a governor. Well, we've had a Democratic governor, but we now have what I have not seen in Pennsylvania. The legislature has flipped, and so we have a legislature. We've got a governor. What is your role in that conversation? What does that mean the mayor can do or get or access given this new state reality? And how should we understand that?
So it's real important. I think if you talk to Congressman Dwight Evans or Boyle, if you talk to, obviously Governor Shapiro elected who's coming in, there's this willingness for us to think outside the box as it relates to all of these structures. When I talk about community college being free, we need the Higher Education Act to have some amendments, right? That will allow us to pay and get some of the federal and access some of the federal money. When you talk about preschool education, we have a federal pocket, we have a state pocket, and then we have our local pocket. None of them are aligned. So if you're a daycare or preschool provider, if you don't know how to navigate that space, we're not leveraging it because we've allowed the systems to define the outputs as opposed to saying, how do we get a universal pre-K and a universal kindergarten program in this city that's real? Because we don't have it. We say we want to do it, but we don't have it. And so it's that alignment of vision and strong leadership. I believe Josh, is very much committed to ensuring that we properly fund schools by ensuring that that money is coming through our funding formula, not the way it's coming out now. And part of the leadership, to provide leadership, is every time we talk about equity or being fairer, we're always talking about removing from someone to give to someone as opposed to adding, right? And saying everybody's entitled to this. And that's why you get the push and pull around, will we give Philadelphia more money? There's a structural funding problem with the 500 plus school districts that we have in the city. And we have to acknowledge it as opposed to fighting it, which is why we can never get fairness in Philadelphia, because it always becomes an issue of where are you taking the money from to give it to Philadelphia. And I think Josh can have the conversation. Governor Shapiro is one of the people like me that thinks this is not about an either or, this is about an and. And once we recognize that, then we can say all kids should have this, as opposed to how we get to equity is by taking from someone and then the political posturing that goes on happens. So I think we're in a very unique and a great position with Biden at the federal level and our congressional delegation, with having a governor that has the kind of vision that Josh has around real inclusive conversations. And then you need a mayor that's going to go to Harrisburg and DC with a plan, right? That's not a plan about 2023. It's a plan about 2030. This is how we get to 2030. And this is the roles we need feds in the state and the city to play to move us forward.
Thank you for that. And thank you for reminding us that this is about 2030. And I don't disagree with that. But let me ask you this in terms of 2023 and 24. People are dying right now, and people are scared right now. And so if you are elected mayor, what do you hit the ground doing in 23, 24? Well, you won't go in 23, but 24, what do you hit the ground doing? I get 2030 and I don't disagree, but what do you hit the ground doing as a mayor?
So, 10 years ago, I gave to all my colleagues the book, the David Kennedy book, Stop, Don't Shoot. And it talks about focused deterrence, that the city is doing some version of it. But when we look at Delaware County, who has had more success, and you've looked at Camden, when you look at other cities, we know who's going to commit the next crime. So we have to have a deployment and a tactical strategy about trying to protect those people, right? To get them out of the system, right? Where we can save the folks. And what I find interesting with the Save the Lives Coalition, I've had an opportunity to talk to the Save the Lives Coalition members. And when we talk about it, we have to save lives immediately, right? So part of it is immediately acknowledging who are the people through that focused deterrence strategy of the majority of the crimes, 90-some% of the crimes are committed by 10% of the people. We got to commit to immediately respond to that 10% so that we can protect the victims who are going to be victimized in there, and then go in a very smart way, in a strategic way, to the folks who are committing the highest crimes. It's worked in other cities. It's worked all over. I know the city, through their gun violence initiative, has adopted some of the principles, but we're not doing it right. And why aren't we doing it right? And it's no fault of the people working in this, but this is when I talk about policing and public safety is not and will not be solved by our police department. It will be solved by our health and human services and others. If a young person walked up to me and said, I want to get out of this life, Maria, we're not built like that. Right? We're not built to say, we got to relocate this young person. We got to relocate the family. We are okay, and we will accept jailing somebody for $63,000 a year, but we have not been willing to say, let's put $30,000 and invest in this young person or this family to save them and save us, right? And so, again, changing the mindset is hugely important. So that's what I would do immediately in that transition. Is like, how are we going to wrap around ourselves with the people most likely to be a victim and most likely to be a perpetrator in the first 100 days?
Thank you for that. The Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church is in 2 locations. And it's interesting to me that while I pastor one congregation, the 2 locations, only 5 miles apart, have very different realities. One is a middle neighborhood, and one is a gentrifying neighborhood. Talk to me about your understanding of how you can help these neighborhoods that are being gentrified, or help people hold on to housing or participate in I want to say this very carefully, in the economic opportunities of gentrification, and how we can help. So I'm thinking around Enon West, things are changing in ways I have never seen before. And I'm concerned that good Black people in Pulaski are not going to be able to stay there. How do you understand your role in the gentrification, affordable housing conversation?
Yeah, the housing and the affordable housing space is where I've spent a lot of my 15 years in council. I live in South Kensington, that is one of the fastest gentrifying neighborhoods in the city, right? And I can speak to what we've done here that I think is very scalable as we move up. One of the things that I first learned when I went into city council, I looked at my district and I looked at its debt. I looked at our crime ratio. I looked at our litter index. I looked at all of those things. And one of the positions that I took was, government should not be in the business of removing people from their homes, which is the most affordable home they will have, and that city debt should not be the reason, and city policy should not be the reason why people choose to leave. They choose to leave because they want to, right? In South Kensington, I have neighbors who bought their house for $12,000. It's now selling for $500,000. They choose to leave. They could stay, and city council has been very proactive in this space around LOOP, UPA, the income-based tax payment plan that really helped us move once after the mortgage foreclosure and preventing people to lose their home for property taxes. I authored that. I offered that because I saw neighborhoods like the one I grew up in, Hunting Park, where people not only had a city debt, right, and the values were increasing, but they also had a water debt. So the tap water program we created that works in tangent. So someone on a limited income in the city of Philadelphia can stay there. The one piece that's missing is the conversation about fairness and property assessments, right? I passed a bill that this administration has not complied with, where we said you cannot use artificial value of properties because of new buildings in the area in a formulaic way to increase the value of a home, right? Unfairly. And you got to demonstrate where you take that abatement off the table for the area, because assessments are done by areas, right? And so what you see happening in Germantown and other neighborhoods like that is when the city did its assessment, and all you have to do is look at that map and look at the increases, and you know this is what they did. They spread the value of abatements to neighbors whose house hasn't changed drastically. And this administration has not proven to us that they removed that artificial value. So because they wanted to increase the base of what the city property is worth, right? They did it by spreading it to the people who least can pay it. The mayor sets that tone. The mayor can say, we're going to have a formula that works. In Washington, D.C., you can go on the website, put in different values for, I got 2 bathrooms, 3, and it does an assessment for you. Clear, transparent. We have not had that process here in the city of Philadelphia. So we need to ensure that the city is never responsible for not allowing people to be able to stay in their homes because of city debt. But then we also need to deal with the value of properties and say, because we have this abatement tool that is a blunt instrument and we want to capture that value, we're going to spread it out to the people who least can pay it. So we can have that conversation and we can fix it in a couple of years, I believe, and we can stop that trajectory. When people choose to leave, they leave because they want to, not because they have to.
All right. Thank you for that. One of the challenges of running after having been on city council, you've been a part of this stuff. And as you have pointed out, you've been around 15 years. Point us to something that you've done in your life as a council person that that lets us see that you can handle this job. Point us to something that you've done in your area that says, I did this, therefore I can do that.
So we have a lot of different pieces. I talked about introducing income-based payment plans, both on the tax and water. In fact, our water tap program has been recognized around the world as one of the most successful and equitable, systems, right? Because there is a conservation component. There's like 40,000 people currently in the city enrolled. And what part of that program also allows that after 2 years, old water debt can be written off, right? For folks, if people are compliant, because many times people were not complying because we put them on payment plans they couldn't pay. So we set them up for failure. And what we demonstrated with those 2 programs, when you give people a pathway to compliance, you actually increase the money that comes into the city. So we have a better record of collections because we've created this pathway. So for me, the toolbox that I've created, right, in my district, which has helped the city, right, income-based payment plans, the BERT reform that proved and changed the trajectory around how we look at small businesses in the city is something that, again, requires a little bit more work to get to a place that's equitable. To me, the elimination of that net income tax, which is the one that the small businesses have the most liability in, when we eliminate that tax, people will grow. Because what we're only 1 of 4 jurisdictions in the country that have that net income activities. New York City, which is the financial capital of the world, Washington, D.C., the political capital of the world, and Detroit. Why do we want to be in that company, right? So we need to say what holds people back. The ethnic chambers of commerce this year demonstrated, right, that what we said in 2012 when we passed this legislation, what they came and they advocated and said, that's exactly what we need to be doing. We said it in 2012. We showed it with the $100,000 exemption. They came in and everybody now understands In order to go grow Black and brown businesses, small businesses, we have to eliminate that tax. So we proved that in our, again, based on the experience. We also did a bill that most people don't know about, unless you're in the manufacturing sector. I had a lot of small manufacturers in my district. And when I got elected, when I was running, they didn't want to talk to me. When I got elected, I went back and I said, what's going on? We are now in a global economy. And we created a single sales factor where if you make something in the city of Philadelphia and you sell it outside, you don't pay the net income tax on it. So people can pencil and be competitive. That tax alone, that reform alone saved the manufacturing sector $60 million a year. So if you calculate how much we've been saving, just that little tax policy alone. So while we couldn't eliminate the net income for everybody, we demonstrated with the manufacturers that it works. So we scale that up, right? And we say, we're going to do this better and simpler. And then lastly, when we talk about neighborhoods, in the 7th Councilmatic District, not only did we remap almost 80-90% of our district, we changed the conversation in the neighborhood about what you were against and worked with 20 plus RCOs to talk about what they'd like to see in the neighborhoods. And in South Kensington, we've been able to allocate more public property for affordability than all of the rest of the council districts combined. And how do we do that? What we did is we worked with the Philadelphia Housing Authority, and we got them to commit to provide 260 properties, lots, to 4 community development corporations for affordability. And then we took land from the land bank and we added it in the queue. So there's 500 affordable units that will be created in this small geography of South Kensington. We can't stop the growth of the private market, but we can shape it, right? By how we use city assets to do that. So we have that plan that we can scale up, right, for the rest of the city. And then lastly, we did a pilot in McPherson that I'm going to talk about as part of this campaign, where we worked with one of our community development corporations. And this has been a pet peeve of mine, where, especially when we talk about middle neighborhoods and other neighborhoods. I had 200 blocks in the district that had 1 or 2 vacancies. And I'm a proponent of, if we fix those vacancies, studies have shown you bring everybody's value up, but we didn't have a city program that could do it. There's no city program for that. So we created the McPherson pilot, and we said, we're going to start with a pilot of 10. We've done 7 properties, and we've been able to acquire and fix 7 properties under $150,000.
Okay.
So there's models for this. And again, I started community development work when I was 15 years old in my neighborhood of Hunting Park. This is the stuff I have lived, right, personally, but it's also what I've seen and what we've been able to do in the 7th Council District around, again, creating the pilots that could be scaled up about what we do all over the city. And one other thing around equity around this, because I think it's really—
said lastly twice.
I know, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But these are important points, because when people think about, North Philadelphia, the gentrifying or whatever, we're the district where we most gave land to gardens and people. We have the most aggressive side lot program in the city of Philadelphia. And that was an important part to do in South Kensington, because if we're going to develop South Kensington, we needed to show people we value how they helped us with blight removal when we were not there as a government, right? And so we turned over hundreds of properties to homeowners who had taken care of properties for years.
Thank you for that. And we appreciate your work. And I appreciate you sharing that. One of the things that I'm asking everyone, and I have made this statement publicly, that the state of Philadelphia politics that I've seen can become ugly and brutal. And what I have said about all of you is that from what I know and what I have experienced over the 28 years of being in here, many of you running could do this job or other jobs. But politics can be so ugly that the winner may come out of this so bruised that all you can be is the mayor, and the losers not able to do anything else? Will you commit to running a positive campaign that speaks to who you are and not who somebody else isn't? And I'm asking each of you to commit to that. I mean, you all are going to do what you're going to do, but I'm asking you, will you commit to really focusing on what you bring to the table and making this a positive experience for those that get involved in the political process?
No, I think, and I've had this conversation with some of the candidates who many are my friends. You know, Sherelle and I both worked with Marion Taskell. We come from that experience. You know, the Derek Green, we come from that experience. I worked with Rebecca. Rebecca spent 10 years inside the Nutter administration and the Kenney before she went outside. And I have said to both of them, just as an example, to Sherelle and to Rebecca, is if we understand the historic nature of this race and what the city needs in terms of being able to bring people together right after this race, we have to run this campaign with a vision about how we bring people together, like already thinking that way. So I intend not only to speak about the importance of that, but I intend to practice it because people are watching, right? And when we are in a room, people are watching. So I already practice that model that behavior. I will, however, provide a contrast, right? Because campaigns are about why me and not this person, the contrast. And in the contrast, it's about the experience, what we've actually done and been able to do, the intersection of the here and now, and why those skill sets are the best ones for the city now. That is what we will do in this campaign, because I like all these people and I'm going to need all these people to work with us to move this city forward.
Thank you very much, Maria Quiñones-Sánchez. When I get a chance, I'm going to ask you if you have any cousins by the name of Quiñones in Cleveland, because my football coach at Woodbury Junior High was Alfonso Quiñones. And so I want to find out.
They were probably related.
Got you.
I
all right.
If there's a nexus back to Puerto Rico and a couple of towns, maybe.
Yep, there it is. Well, listen, thank you so much. And thank all of you for joining us tonight. This is the second of our mayoral conversations. Each Saturday evening, we'll be right here at 5 o'clock with all of them. We've extended this invitation to everyone to take this time. As I've pointed out, I'm just going to ask a few questions and let them talk. We want to now have a word of prayer. We're praying both for all of them, praying specifically that God's will be done in this. I'm encouraging everyone, get out and vote, follow up, watch this, and look forward to all of Black media coming together around this after I have finished this part. And we all get together and we turn this over to the journalists to dig in a little deeper in this conversation. Thank you so much, Ms. Sanchez, for being a part of us. I look forward to seeing you all in the morning. Remember, 10 o'clock service, I've got something to share with you that I think is Leon Sullivan 2.0. Not I am, but it is. And I think it's important for the development of our community. And I look forward to seeing you all in the morning. Come on, let's go to God in prayer. God, I thank you. I thank you for Sis Sanchez. I thank you for her heart for the city. I thank you for all of those that are running, and I thank you for her participating tonight. Lord, we come together praying for our children in Florida. We come together praying for this city. We pray for everyone that will stand to preach the gospel tomorrow, Lord, that the gospel would go forth with power and conviction. Someone would come asking, what must I do to be saved? Lord, we ask that you turn the light on in someone's mind as how they can serve in this city, because we believe that the best is yet to come in Philadelphia. And we pray, oh God, that you would bind us together as a church family, Lord. Help us to be active and help us to be aware, help us to be awake so that ultimately in our lives, you would get glory and it would be for our good. Now, God, as we go throughout the rest of this day, would that you go with us and stand by us until we meet again. We ask it through Christ, and for his sake we do pray. Let us all say, amen, amen, amen. Listen, love y'all much. Thank you, Sis Sanchez. And I'll see y'all in the morning. God bless you and God keep you is my prayer.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.